Welcome to Steward Leaders, a podcast for leaders who understand that our leadership is not about us. I'm Eric Alexander. In these conversations, we explore what it means to lead as stewards, living our leadership for something bigger than ourselves. Listeners, thanks for joining us today. And hello to you as well, Paul Barnhurst. I'm so grateful you've made time for a Steward Leaders conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation. So thank you, Eric.
You bet. Me too. I'm looking forward to this. I discovered Paul through poking around looking for some good websites, finance related, and he's got the nickname the FP&A guy. And when you look on his website, you can see, yes, he's pretty much all things FP&A. For those without a finance background, that's financial planning and analysis, FP&A. Big deal in finance, super valuable and important opportunities for lots of value contribution. And he's doing lots of neat things around FP&A. Let me read a couple of highlights off his bio, and then we'll let him see what he wants to expand on. So he's a FP&A professional. He doesn't just talk about it, he's done the work. He's a corporate trainer, a consultant, public speaker, and he's founded www.thefpnaguy.com, where he shares expert knowledge and resources in the field of finance. He has a Master of Science in Information Management, an MBA in Finance, and then FPAC. He has several finance-related certifications, Financial Planning and Analysis Certified Professional, Financial Planning and Analysis Professional, and Advanced Financial Modeler. And there may be more that I've missed there, but Paul,
I think
really
you covered it.
grateful to have you here. Anything you want to expand on?
You know, it's funny as you're reading the bio, when people think the website, they hear FP&A and they always wonder what it is. You'll laugh at this. I think your audience will as well. Whenever I have to give somebody my email, it's, first initial, last name at thefpnaguy.com. But when you say that to somebody, they're like, what? And how do you spell it? And they're thinking ampersand. So I just say the F Panda or the F and Panda guy. And most people get a laugh out of that and it works better. So I even have some shirts that say F Panda and have a panda over the A in FP&A.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to if you didn't, but yes, when I see your email, when I see the website, Panda jumps out at me, but it's FP and A, so the F Panda. That's
Correct.
hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who's worked in finance understand, okay, FP&A, I get it. But if you
Right.
don't, you're looking at it. And I still remember somebody commenting one time, who's the F and Panda guy? And this person worked in FP&A. That was the best part of it. They weren't like a non-finance person. It's someone I'd worked with. And I just laughed when he goes, first time I read that, that's what I read. And I just laughed because he was an employee that I quasi-managed, kind of had an indirect management line too. So it was
That's
really
great.
funny when you told me that.
Well, anything you want to add about your background? I
As
mentioned
far as
you've been
background,
doing the stuff. Anything about your current endeavor?
no, I think you covered it well. Like I said, I just do a lot of podcasting, a lot of talking. It's really all about helping people be better at supporting the business, which, to get into stewards leadership, that's a lot about it's serving others and focusing on others' needs.
Yes.
And, we talk about technical skills, talk about all that, but at its core, the message I repeatedly give people is about business partnering, which has a lot to do with steward leadership, which I know we'll get into. So excited to talk about that topic. It's one of my favorites.
Well, that's good. As I found his stuff as a resource, I featured it, I think it was a month, maybe 2 months ago, Paul, on my monthly email said, hey, y'all need to check this out. Among the things I've been reading, things I've been listening to. So yeah, I hope some people there were able to benefit from it and maybe some more today too.
Hope so.
Let's jump into some questions. You've got your own experience, but then also, especially with your 3 podcasts, you're talking to lots of Panda FP&A professionals all the time. Based on that, your experience and what you're hearing from other professionals, what are keys to maximizing the value of the contribution coming out of FP&A?
Yeah. So, there's a few things. You have to have solid technical skills. I would be remiss if I didn't say, look, it's not just about having great communication or storytelling or partnering skills. You have to understand how to build a model. You need to be able to do analysis. You need to be able to do Excel, and more important than ever, you got to understand AI and data thinking and systems thinking. And so, that's something that comes up a lot. That's a, kind of reoccurring trend. The thing that's interesting that I find, one, I think everybody in FP&A and just finance accounting world, probably the biggest struggle right now is figuring out how to use AI. So if we put that aside for a minute and move beyond that, the other thing I think is really interesting is just how often people repeatedly comment about great FP&A. The best FP&A professionals are curious,
Mm,
they're operationally focused.
mhm,
And then one thing that comes up, it's come up probably six, seven times, and it almost always comes up from CFOs or highly successful leaders, is empathy.
mm,
Almost never comes up from someone early in their career.
mhm.
And that's not mean that they're bad. It's just you realize how important it is. I think it's really interesting because, if I say empathy and finance, most people look at you like, what are you talking about?
Right. It's all
So
about the numbers.
yeah, and the reality is numbers is just the language we speak. It's all about understanding the operations and learning how to communicate and influence through and with numbers.
Mhm.
I mean, as you know, I know you've been a CFO, so you can appreciate that.
Right, right. I've been a CFO. I've done FP&A work myself.
Yeah,
So yeah, I get it. And it's interesting. So I was being sarcastic, of course, when I said it's all about the numbers. Clearly, it's
of
not.
course.
But if we don't get the numbers right, it has implications for the business,
Hmm.
operational outcomes, which always have people effects. And so it's
Yes.
interesting you bring up the empathy. One of the things I talk about in the book is we can't forget on the other side of every number, there's a person. And it's so easy for us to get quantitatively focused and for a senior leader to call that out and talk to the people in FP&A. And basically, it's saying, your analysis is significant, it's valuable. Don't forget the effects the decisions here can have on real people.
100%. I mean, one of the most stressful times for me of my entire career in FP&A was COVID.
Hmm.
And we're running analysis every day, and I had to help create the models when the business came to us and said, look, over the next 6 months, you have to cut 20% of all your costs.
Hmm.
And that mostly meant people.
Yes.
That was just the reality, whether we laid them off, whether we furloughed, reduced hours. There were a number of different approaches depending on the leaders. And I had to track all that and having conversations. Well, do you think we should let go of this person? Or what do you think about this? And that was really hard
Hmm.
because every decision you make impacts somebody's life.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, it also impacts the business. So,
Well, this is not just finance related. We do this in business. We come up with
yeah,
all these euphemisms. It's a reduction in force, it's right sizing, it's downsizing, and yeah, I'm not saying those are inappropriate, but if we layer those labels on top of a human reality and miss the human effects, that's we're missing an opportunity to really lead well and be thoughtful in how we provide our analysis.
correct. The best leaders understand the human side. I still
Yes.
remember, over my career, there was a situation where they brought in a new CEO. They wanted to do a bunch of layoffs before the holidays to get them done, the private equity. And the
Mhm.
CEO said, sorry, I won't recover from something like that. It's not the way I work. He'd been there 2 months. It's like, I'm not laying off 20% of my workforce over the holidays. He was gone by February or even earlier. I don't think they did layoffs in February. I think he was gone beginning of the year. It's like this isn't for me, which shows there's a balance. Yes, he realized they had to be done and he was going to do them. The company had to be right sized. Expenses had outstripped revenue growth for 3 straight years.
Right.
That's not a sustainable model any way you look at it.
Mhm.
But there's a human element that you need to consider for what's the long-term impact of what you're doing.
That's good. It's a good, powerful reminder. It's interesting. The start of your list, though, you said curious, operational focus, and empathy. And I love you started with curious. I want to clarify, though. Often, many of our people, especially outside of finance, will look at us and say, "Yes, you guys, you ladies, really are pretty curious." You're talking about possessing curiosity, not being the corporate oddball in the mix, right? Or maybe a little bit of both.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So one of the best answers I got, and I love the term, I was interviewing, I think it's Brian McGrath. Anyway, the chief operating officer for a company called Future View. and it was Brian something, I think it was McGrath, and he said humble curiosity.
Mm.
Then he went on to describe, because I'd never had anyone say humble. I'd heard curious plenty of times, but never
Mhm.
humble curiosity. And what he said, he goes, the difference is some finance people will be curious just for the sake of learning it so they can be right or they can rebut or just,
Oh,
you're curious because you want to know how to respond. Because humble curiosity is you're honestly wanting to learn to better help them accomplish their goals.
mhm.
And so I've used that sense because I really like that subtle distinction. Because we've all seen people that are kind of curious just to be right or to get the right answer or do what they need to. And then there's a curious because I'm genuinely interested in helping the other person and doing what's best for the business. And there is a difference.
Mhm. I like that. When I was at the bank and we'd gone from just doing analysis, FP&A activities off the edge of my desk when I had time to
Hmm.
quietly starting to train somebody to help me with that quietly
Sure.
because I had to be careful that there wasn't a perception of we're ramping up back office expense and overhead unduly. And until finally we had leadership that understood, oh, there really is value add here. And we were able to form a department with multiple people and a leader. One of the things I insisted is always start with the business case. Don't go right to the numbers. What is the business case? That whole curiosity, that humble
Hmm.
curiosity of why is this even an issue? What are the business, operational, maybe even cultural, strategic realities around this that I need to know so we even know which numbers to pay attention to?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. And I still remember grad school, I had a professor, Professor Gallagher was his name. And every finance assignment we had to do started with a pretty detailed write-up, not with the model. We always did a five forces analysis. So you were building an understanding of the business and the business case and your assumptions before you did the model. And yes, he looked at the model, and that was important in the sense if you did something fundamentally wrong, but it wasn't he was looking for the exact right answer. He was really looking, have you thought through the whole case?
Yes.
Are you reasoning it appropriately? Are you using proper logic? And then, his job was to teach us the skills so we could build the models, but having that framework up front.
If you don't have that, you will miss something vital, possibly. There may be times you do just fine by accident, but I don't want
Yeah.
my team relying on doing this well by accident.
Well, and it's the concern with AI.
Yes.
AI,
Yes.
are you giving it all the context? Does it really understand the human judgment side? It's going to get better and better at building models. It can do it now. You could question to what level, how sophisticated, how good it is. There's still a lot of open questions, but it's getting better and better. And so that human side is going to become the assumptions, the business logic, the judgments going to become even more important.
Okay, that's good. Well, you brought up a challenge, which was where I was going next. What other, in addition to AI, and maybe elaborate on that some too, but what challenges are especially prominent right now for people doing FP&A?
Well, I think it's similar, and a study hasn't been done. I'd be really interested to see. So, in the C-suite, what role do you think has the shortest tenure?
Shortest tenure. Wow. I hope it's not the CFO. I've not
It,
really checked, Paul. Is it
it's the
CFO?
CFO, and it's getting shorter.
Hmm,
I mean, who's asked now to do a lot of commercial stuff to kind of be the
right.
right hand to the CEO? Plus, they have all the governance. Like marketing doesn't have the governance and regulatory rules of finance in most
True.
companies, very
True.
few. Sales doesn't. So you got a whole governance regulatory, and now you're expected to almost kind of be like a chief value officer.
Hmm,
And I think that's felt by finance because what you're seeing more and more is it's much more common for CFOs nowadays to come up through FP&A. And I've seen many people have predicted it's just a matter of time of when that shift happens that more comes up through FP&A than accounting. Now, someone came up through FP&A may have been accounting to FP&A,
right.
but it's pretty common to see outside of that. And so I think one of the challenges is burnout beyond
Hmm.
AI. And I
Hmm.
think it's going to kind of follow in some ways like the CFO. I think the reason they have the shortest tenure and they switch a lot is burnout. It's a demanding role.
Hmm.
And it's the dark side that nobody wants to talk about, so to speak. But that challenge, the second challenge is the solution to that AI. Because the burnout is rarely coming from great business partnering. If you think what you enjoyed about a CFO and what was burning you out, it probably wasn't the business cases and influencing the business and helping it move forward. That's probably what you thrived on and enjoyed.
Mhm.
It was probably the paperwork, the regulatory, the manual. Why do these two numbers not tie? Are you kidding me? We should know what's on our balance sheet. We have an ERP here.
Why
You
did
know,
we have this internal control lapse? Why can I not get this colleague to collaborate and cooperate?
yeah, there's the human side, the colleagues. That's a whole managing the people. That's in everybody, right? Any leadership position. But I think in finance, particularly, the biggest solve for all the manual stuff, which is I think where the burnout typically comes from, the messy data, things like that, is a data foundation in AI. And they go hand in hand. If you don't have the data foundation, AI is not going to get you to where you need to be. If you have the data foundation and if you invest the time with AI, it will help FP&A be more of the role it should be than it often is.
With appropriate governance, with appropriate visibility, no black boxes where it's just doing its magic and delivering the results and we don't know how it got there.
Correct. You need the transparency. You need all those things. You need to be able to validate it. Do you have to understand everything of how it got there? No, but you have to have enough that you can validate it and be comfortable it's right. And I think that's the key. Like Excel, I'm comfortable its formulas work right because I can do the math, but I don't understand the coding that was used to do it.
Right, right. Well, in a way, it's very similar to what we did and should be doing with an Excel model. We crunch all the numbers and we back up and say, does this make sense?
You would hope, you would think.
We had better.
That's the right answer, but I have seen, unfortunately, though, and how many times have you seen this in your career? And I think this gets just much broader than this, but how often does the model just validate what people have already decided versus the model is actually helping us decide?
Yes, and sometimes that can be political, where we know how to tweak the inputs and the relationships to drive towards one end of a range.
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
No, it's not. I mean, in an ideal world, the model should be what's driving the decision versus the decision driving the model. Because you should be doing all the model and research before you make the final decision. Yes, you're going to have an idea where you're going. It's probably likely going to be where you started. But as soon as you put that politics and pressure, you remove a lot of that freedom to really challenge and make sure you're optimizing your outcome.
And that brings up a point related to how we think about the outputs from the modeling. I've found that sometimes it's more helpful to have a range than it is to have a single point estimate.
Mhm.
And then also maybe sometimes the most beneficial thing that can happen is I can play with scenarios where I can identify sensitivities of what input assumption changes have an outsized effect on the output. That tells me where I need to focus from a business operational perspective. Maybe it's in a deal. Maybe we're wanting to do an acquisition. If we're not careful, we can try to tinker with all the inputs to give us the point estimate that makes the CEO happy to go to the board to get the deal done. And in the process, we have this range where a big chunk of the range of likelihood is significant value destruction.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I was sitting in a meeting with leadership, so I was the one building the models for our corp dev team for acquisitions, and we were in acquisition mode. We acquired two companies I built a model for. One I built a model, we looked at a few others. And on one of the deals we were looking at, they had entered into, that preliminary definitive, depending on everything, we'll move forward something, and here's the rough number. And as we got into the analysis and I'm building the number, they kept coming back with lower and lower pipeline. And so this is supposed to be a hyper growth company. I remember going, why are we continuing to make this work? To the corp dev person. Like you realize that if they can't hit any of the numbers in this point, why would we believe anything after that? Like this, and I think the CFO saw it. I had mentioned like that in the meeting, and it was finally just brought up in front of everybody. And it's like, just tell them we're out. And I was like, thank you, because I could just tell if we had went forward with that deal, we were never going to achieve what we said we were going to, because they couldn't even achieve. They were quite a bit under what they were promising. Now, why would we expect it to get way better after the fact, just because they said it would?
after the disruption of the deal, unless we have some lever that they're not deploying.
Yeah, and it was really I mean, obviously it could help with sales and there's some things, but a lot
Sure.
of that was already sprinkled in, but they were, an extension, a whole new product line. It wasn't like we were buying something where we were the experts.
Hmm.
Yes,
Hmm.
we had expertise in the overall area, but not really what we were buying. And so I was really glad when we just said, let's get out of this.
Instead of trying to manipulate the numbers to support, and there,
Because
we
that's what
don't
I'd been
just,
doing. I'd already done that, and I'm looking at it going, you know what we have to do to get there? Like this isn't going to happen.
and we don't do it just with FP&A. Sometimes in the process, we'll do it with any other kinds of things going into a decision input. But
Mhm.
yes, you're right. That can be a challenge and a trap for people working in the FP&A world.
Yeah, and it can be a trap for businesses in general. There's a reason why most business deals fail. Most acquirers overpay.
Hmm. Agreed. Variety of reasons.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, is there another challenge you'd like to point out before I go to another question?
No, I think that's it. Of
Okay. You started here, but I'm going to come back and probe a little bit more.
course.
How does stewardship come into play with FP&A?
Well, I mean, first and foremost is the obvious stewards of the money. As one of the things I like to say is one of the primary jobs of FP&A is to help maximize the allocation of the next dollar.
Hmm.
If there's not a bigger stewardship opportunity than trying to figure out how we best spend our money, in a company, I don't know what else there is, right? You have a level of responsibility that few people do, and that can be a real, challenge.
Typically, FP&A is brought in for consequential decisions. It's not brand X or brand Y for the paper towel in the bathrooms. It's, are we
I'd
going
hope
to
not.
build or buy this significant real estate investment?
Mhm.
Buy this company or not buy this? Sell our company, not sell our company? These tend to be really big decisions and the kinds of things that do call for empathy, coming back to where you started.
100%. I mean, if you have to help manage, the decisions that are made, usually you're not the one who's actually having to tell people they're laid off. Sometimes you are as a manager, but
Hmm.
that's not so much, that's not finance. That's HR's job to actually have those conversations. But you need to have empathy with HR and everybody throughout to help them because that VP that might have to let go of 20% of his workforce, that's not going to be easy for him. He could be
Right.
quite emotional with that. He might have to let go of good friends.
Hmm.
You never know who they have to. So you always have to be very professional and really try to put yourself in their shoes. And even more so because FP&A is a support function.
Hmm.
Like every so often I see people on LinkedIn say FP&A is in a revenue center. And I'm like, I don't know what world you live in, but we don't sell. We don't generate revenue. You could argue we create value, and I believe that. If you
Right.
want to call us a value center, fine, but we're not revenue. We support the business. I
Hmm.
think anytime you're in a support function, one of the best ways you can support people is by having empathy, trying to understand what they're going through. Doesn't mean you agree, doesn't mean you sympathize. It means you're listening, you're communicating, you're understanding, and they will feel that and they will see that.
Love that. So when I think about finance a little bit more broadly, one of the things that's prominent, and it's definitely FP&A, but it's also financial reporting, it's management reporting, it's tax, I mean, it's a variety of places. It's we are stewards who are helping provide information for decision making. We're
Yep.
not the only ones providing the only information, but we definitely are, and it comes through all those different channels out of the finance function. We have a responsibility for several things: the quality of the data, the quality of the analysis, the clarity of our presentations. I've seen situations where the analysis may be wonderful, but nobody understands because the person who did it is struggling with how to articulate, especially as it relates to operational realities, or be doing it in a way that's totally devoid of any empathy. To explore some of those a little bit.
Yeah, so I think one thing you said is operational realities. I think I mentioned this earlier. Again and again, one of the things I hear to be a better business partner, understand the operations. I do a financial modeling podcast. Again and again, the modelers say the better you understand the business and the assumptions, the better you can be at modeling. So I think the area I take that in helping with those decisions is the most important thing we can do is be commercially minded. If we're just going to be in the numbers, we're just going to be in the reporting, that's not what the business needs. There's only I'd say there's three people, and I'd love your take on this, that I think get truly a whole view of the business. I'd say two people in one group: CEO, CFO, and FP&A. And again, it depends on the company and how FP&A is structured, but the FP&A function as a whole, and often individuals within that, are one of the few that really get an appreciation, are working and seeing all the different areas of the business. So if we don't understand those workings, mistakes are going to be made, suboptimal decisions. If you only understand marketing, you're supporting marketing and you do what they want, you're not thinking, how does that impact customer support? How does it impact tech? How does that impact sales? They're going to come back and be like, well, did you think about this? No, I just focus on my business. It's not helpful FP&A.
Right.
It's suboptimal. And suboptimal over the long run means below average returns, which eventually leads to financial struggles. It's a question of when, not if.
I agree that the FP&A within the finance definitely has an opportunity for a broad view of the business, needs that broad view of the business. As it relates to consequential decisions, there may be lots of parts of the business that they won't touch on because there's not much happening in terms of dynamism around the edges, which is where we
Sure.
tend to get pulled in. But
Yeah,
let's
exactly. They're not going to get into every decision, and nor should they. If they did, yeah, that'd be a problem. But anything important financial, they should be involved in.
so talk a little bit about how FP&A professionals present their conclusions. I think there's a stewardship aspect there too.
There definitely is. I think the biggest problem is they don't present their conclusions. What I mean by that, and I've had this conversation with several people. So I interviewed a guy who runs a nationwide recruiting firm. I think it was Fox Recruiting or something. And he commented the number one thing he hears when he has people come to him and say what they need is, I need a finance person that can not just give the data to the business, but tell them what to do with it. We so often miss on the last mile. Still remember John Jack Alexander. He's written two books on FP&A. He was the CFO. And he goes, I get a new analyst. They bring me something. They go, here's the report or here's the analysis you wanted. He'd flip it open. He'd look at it. He goes, I don't see any opinion. You didn't tell me anything. This isn't an analysis. This is a report, and hand it back to him. And like, I need you to give me an opinion. And so one of the best principles I heard from someone is the rule of 1-3-1. Focus on one problem or one question you're trying to answer. Give the business three potential solutions and your one recommendation.
And why you're making your recommendation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. With your
That's
recommendation.
implicit in the
Why?
recommendation.
Yep, 100% agree. Because if you're doing that more often than not, your analysis will go somewhere. You'll influence the business. Doesn't mean they'll always do what you want. Doesn't mean they'll even do
Right.
what you want most of the time. But if it's good analysis and you're thinking smart and you understand operations, it will influence the business in a positive direction and they will trust you more.
And if it's not the direction the business leader chooses to go and a dialogue is created, the feedback there to the analyst can help that analyst then grow in their understanding of, oh, here's another part of the operational reality I wasn't thinking about, or a risk I wasn't aware of. I had a colleague who would do this regularly with my FP&A team. He would say, I want you to be a partner in us thinking about how we're solving our problems. And the collaboration, it helped to develop those FP&A people as business people and helped the business people grow in their financial understanding. It was powerful.
No, I think that's a wonderful way to look at it, and clearly, very powerful. And the second part is sometimes they're going to do something you disagree with. You basically voice your opinion. After that, you have two options. You can either say, I don't want to be a part of this and go elsewhere, or you can say, okay, and move forward. Now, later on, you may prove to be right. You may prove to be wrong. Don't gloat about it. Don't gloat about it, but, use it as an opportunity to learn.
Well, and sometimes the reason for going a different direction is there's a non-quantitative, a non-financial issue.
Correct.
Maybe it's
Yep.
cultural. Okay, we're going to spend more money here than seems like ideal financially, but we have a reason to do it that's impossible to measure.
Correct. And
I've seen
sometimes
that.
it's just bad politics. We've all seen it, and bad leaders. And so
Sometimes
that's
it's
where you
ego,
have to you have to just make the decision that's best for you.
right? Well, I've got one more quick question as we get
Sure.
ready to land this plane. Anything especially interesting you're reading or listening to these days?
Um, I mostly read fiction, so probably
Okay.
nothing there for the audience. But on the learning side, I'm taking a couple AI courses, and so that's good. I was watching some videos the other day, and just it's amazing to see what we can do today to just a few years ago. So exciting times.
It is exciting times. Well, there's lots here for all of us as steward leaders to be thinking about. Paul, I'm so grateful you took time for today's conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Eric.
Good stuff. Thanks, friend. Thanks for listening to Steward Leaders. If this conversation was helpful, you can find more episodes and additional resources at stewardleaderspodcast.com. Leadership is temporary. Stewardship is about forever.